I never thought I would be the kind of girl who checks someone else's phone. For most of my life, I believed trust was the only thing that made relationships real. If you start searching for problems, you will always find them. That was something I used to say to my friends whenever they talked about going through their boyfriend's messages or checking call logs. I always thought love should feel calm, safe, until the night I saw the name in Ryan's phone. The rain had been falling since the afternoon. Not a storm, just that quiet, endless kind of rain that makes the whole city feel gray and heavy. I was standing in the kitchen of our small apartment, waiting for the water to boil for pasta, listening to the drops hitting the window. Ryan had just come home from work. He looked tired but relaxed, like he usually did on Fridays. He dropped his keys on the table, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and said he was going to take a shower. His phone stayed on the kitchen table. That wasn't unusual. Ryan never carried it everywhere like some people do. Sometimes he would forget it in another room for hours. I wasn't paying attention to it at first. I was stirring the sauce, thinking about the movie we were planning to watch later. Something simple. One of those quiet nights that make you feel like life is finally stable. Then the phone vibrated. The sound was soft but sharp enough to catch my attention. The screen lit up. At first I only glanced at it out of instinct, the same way you look at a clock without really meaning to. But then I saw the name, 2 words, "Do not answer." My hand stopped moving. For a moment I thought I read it wrong. I leaned a little closer to the table, pretending I was reaching for the salt, but really I just wanted to see the screen again. The call was still ringing. Do not answer. No picture, no emojis, no nickname, just those words. The call ended before I could think about it too much. The screen went dark. I stood there in the kitchen, holding the wooden spoon in my hand, suddenly feeling like the room had become quieter than before. Maybe it was spam. That was the first explanation my mind offered. Telemarketers. Scam callers. Everyone gets them. Maybe Ryan saved the number like that so he wouldn't accidentally pick up again. But then another thought appeared, slower and heavier. If it was just spam, why save it at all? Why not block it? The water started boiling loudly behind me, snapping me out of my thoughts. I quickly dropped the pasta into the pot and tried to ignore the strange feeling growing in my chest. It was probably nothing. Ryan and I had been together for almost 2 years. 2 years without drama, without secrets. At least that's what I believed. He was the kind of guy people trusted easily. Calm voice, steady eyes, the type of person who always looked like he had everything under control. He worked as a project manager for a small construction company. His days were long but predictable. Work, gym, home. We met through mutual friends at a birthday party. I still remember how natural everything felt from the beginning. No games, no confusion. Just 2 people slowly building something real. That's why the name on the phone felt so wrong. Ryan came back from the shower a few minutes later, his hair still wet, wearing a gray t-shirt and sweatpants. He smiled when he saw the food. "Smells amazing," he said. I smiled back. I didn't mention the call, not because I was hiding something, mostly because I didn't want to sound ridiculous. I could already imagine how the conversation would go, Ryan laughing gently. "It's just spam." And maybe it really was. We ate dinner, talked about small things, watched half a movie before both of us got distracted and started scrolling through our phones like everyone does nowadays. At some point, Ryan stood up and went to the bedroom to grab a charger. His phone stayed on the couch next to me. I told myself not to look at it. It wasn't my business. But the curiosity had already planted itself somewhere deep in my mind. The screen lit up again. Another vibration. This time it wasn't a call, just a notification. My eyes moved automatically, and there it was again, the same name. Do not answer. A missed call. My heart started beating faster. Ryan was still in the other room. I could hear drawers opening and closing. The phone was right next to my leg. If I picked it up, it would only take a second to see the number. Just one look. I sat there frozen, fighting with myself. Part of me felt ashamed for even thinking about it. Another part felt something stronger. A quiet fear. Not a dramatic one, not the kind you see in movies. Just that uncomfortable voice in your head whispering that something might be wrong. Finally, I reached for the phone. My fingers felt strangely cold. The screen unlocked with Ryan's usual swipe pattern. He had shown it to me months ago when I needed to use his phone for something. He never acted like it was a secret. The call log opened instantly. The number was at the top, no name, just the label, "Do not answer." and several missed calls from the same number. Not just today, over the past few weeks. My stomach tightened. That meant this wasn't random. Ryan knew exactly who this was, and he had decided not to answer. But he didn't block it either, which meant something else, something more complicated. I stared at the number for a long moment. I knew I shouldn't do anything else. I should just put the phone back where it was. Pretend I never saw it. But the curiosity was stronger now, stronger than logic, stronger than trust. I pressed the number. The phone started dialing. For a second I almost panicked and tried to hang up, but it was too late. The call was already going through. Each ring felt louder than the last. My heart was beating so hard that I was sure Ryan would hear it from the bedroom. 1 ring. 2 rings, 3, then the line clicked. Someone answered. For a moment there was only silence. Then a woman's voice, calm, cold, "Hello?" I didn't say anything. My mind went completely blank. The woman spoke again. "Yes." My throat felt dry. Finally, I forced the words out. "Hi, I think I might have the wrong number." There was a pause on the other side, a long one. Then the woman said something that made the world around me feel like it had tilted slightly. "I don't think you do." Her voice didn't sound angry. It sounded curt. My fingers tightened around the phone. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I was just calling back because I saw this number on my boyfriend's phone." Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost tired. "I see." Something about the way she said those 2 words made my chest feel heavy. Then she added the sentence that I would replay in my head hundreds of times later. "I'm his wife." For a moment, I honestly thought I had misheard her. The room suddenly felt smaller. The sound of rain against the window became louder again, like someone had turned the volume up on the world. "I think there's a mistake," I said quickly. But even as the words left my mouth, they sounded weak. The woman didn't laugh. She didn't argue. She just spoke slowly, like someone explaining something inevitable. "There's no mistake." My stomach dropped. I looked toward the hallway, half expecting Ryan to walk back into the living room at any second. My voice came out almost as a whisper. Ryan Carter?" Another short silence. Then the woman answered. "Yes." And in that moment, the quiet life I thought I understood started to crack. I remember sitting there with the phone pressed against my ear, staring at the floor as if it might suddenly give me answers. My mind refused to process what I had just heard. "I'm his wife." The words echoed in my head, but they didn't feel real. They felt like something from another life, another story that had nothing to do with me. Ryan couldn't be married. I knew him. I knew his friends, his job, the places he liked to go on weekends. We had spent holidays together. We had talked about moving to a bigger apartment next year. I had met his parents. Nothing in those 2 years had ever suggested something like this. And yet the woman on the phone sounded absolutely certain. My voice came out small and unsteady. That's not possible." The woman didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound angry or emotional. If anything, her calmness made everything worse. "It's very possible," she said quietly. I felt the air leave my lungs. Behind me, somewhere down the hallway, I could still hear Ryan moving around in the bedroom. A drawer closing. The soft thud of something being placed on the nightstand. I suddenly became aware that I was still holding his phone, still standing in the middle of our living room, still talking to a stranger who claimed to be his wife. My heart started racing. "How long?" I asked before I could stop myself. There was a short pause. "Long enough," she replied. That answer felt like a punch to the stomach. I pressed my free hand against the kitchen counter to steady myself. My legs felt weak, like they might give out if I moved. I tried to think logically. Maybe this was someone lying. Maybe someone who hated him. An ex. A jealous coworker. Someone trying to cause problems. But another thought pushed its way into my mind. Why would Ryan save her number as "do not answer"? That sounded like the kind of contact name someone uses when they're trying to avoid trouble. When they know picking up the call will start a conversation they don't want to have. "You called him earlier," I said slowly. "Yes." "Why?" Another pause. The rain outside had grown heavier. I could hear the steady rhythm of drops against the window, like a clock counting down something I didn't understand. "Because I was hoping he would finally answer," the woman said. Her tone had changed slightly. Not angry, but tired, like someone who had been carrying something for a long time. A horrible idea began forming in my head. "What do you mean, finally? He hasn't answered my calls for weeks." My throat tightened. Weeks. That matched the call log I had just seen. Ryan walked back into the living room at that exact moment. I nearly dropped the phone. He looked relaxed, holding a charger in his hand, completely unaware of what was happening. Our eyes met. For a split second I wondered if he could somehow see everything on my face. The confusion, the fear, the growing suspicion, but he only smiled. "Found it," he said casually. I turned slightly away so he wouldn't hear the voice from the phone. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure the woman on the other end could hear it. "I didn't know," I whispered. The woman didn't respond right away. Then she asked something that made my stomach twist. "Did he tell you about me?" "No." Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice sounded almost sympathetic. "That doesn't surprise me." I felt my chest tighten. Ryan walked toward the kitchen, plugging the charger into the wall. He didn't seem suspicious. He didn't even look at the phone in my hand. He trusted me. The thought hit me suddenly and painfully. He trusted me while possibly lying to me every day. I lowered my voice even more. "How long have you been married?" 4 years. The number hit me like ice water. 4 years. Ryan and I had been together for 2, which meant my mind refused to finish the thought. I felt sick. The woman continued speaking slowly, like someone revealing pieces of a story she had already accepted. "We separated a few months ago," she said, "but we're still legally married." I closed my eyes. Separated, not divorced. That didn't make things better. If anything, it made them more confusing. Ryan walked past me toward the fridge, humming quietly to himself. The normalcy of the moment felt surreal. I suddenly realized I couldn't keep standing there like this. I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. "I have to go," I whispered into the phone. The woman didn't stop me. "Of course," she said. Then, just before I ended the call, she added one more sentence. "You deserve to know the truth." The line went silent. I slowly lowered the phone. My hands were shaking. Ryan closed the fridge and looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. I forced a small smile. "Yeah." The lie came out automatically. He didn't question it. He took the phone from my hand casually, like nothing strange had happened, and plugged it into the charger. Then he sat down next to me on the couch. The distance between us felt suddenly enormous. My mind was racing. Every memory from the last 2 years started replaying in a different light. Late nights when he said he had extra work. Weekends when he visited old friends. The times he ignored calls and said it was probably spam. I tried to find something that proved the woman was lying, something that showed this was all a misunderstanding. But doubt had already taken root. That night, I barely slept. Ryan fell asleep quickly beside me, breathing slowly and evenly. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the same words again. "I'm his wife." By morning, my head was full of questions. I thought about confronting him immediately, just waking him up and asking everything. But something held me back. Fear, not fear of him, fear of the answer, because once I asked, everything could change. The next day, Ryan left early for work. He kissed my forehead before leaving, the same way he always did. "See you tonight," he said. I watched the door close behind him, and suddenly the apartment felt unfamiliar, like I had been living inside a carefully built illusion. For the next few hours, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Finally, sometime in the afternoon, I made a decision. I picked up my own phone, and I called the number again. It rang twice before the woman answered. "Yes, it's me," I said. She recognized my voice immediately. "I was wondering if you would call back." I took a deep breath. "I need to understand something." I figured. I hesitated for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me all night. "Do you have proof?" There was silence on the line. Then she said something unexpected. "Actually, yes." My heart skipped. "What kind of proof?" She took a second before answering. "Maybe it would be easier if we just met." The suggestion made my stomach tighten again. Meeting the woman who claimed to be Ryan's wife felt unreal. But at the same time, it felt necessary. "When?" I asked. "Tonight," she said. I agreed. The rest of the day passed slowly. By the time evening came, my nerves felt stretched thin. The cafe she suggested was small and quiet. I arrived early and sat at a corner table, watching the door. Every time someone walked in, my heart jumped. Finally, about 10 minutes later, a woman stepped inside. She looked around the room and then walked directly toward me. She was probably in her early 30s. Dark hair, confident posture. She sat down across from me without hesitation. "You must be Emily," she said. I froze. I had never told her my name. Before I could ask how she knew it, something strange happened. Her expression suddenly changed. The serious look on her face disappeared. Instead, she started smiling. Not a polite smile, an amused one. For a moment I thought she had lost her mind. Then she leaned back in the chair and laughed. A real laugh. Confused, I stared at her. "I'm sorry," she said between breaths. "I really tried to stay serious." My brain struggled to catch up. "What?" She wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. "Wow, you really called." I felt a cold wave of confusion wash over me. "What are you talking about?" She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. A moment later, she turned the screen toward me. It was a group chat. Several people were sending messages rapidly, laughing emojis, comments. One message stood out. "Ryan, did she actually call?" My stomach dropped. The woman looked at me with a mixture of guilt and amusement. "I guess we should explain." "We," I repeated. She nodded. "Ryan's friends." The room suddenly felt very quiet. "This whole thing, the phone call, the wife story," she sighed. "It was a prank." I stared at her, unable to speak. "A stupid one," she added quickly. "But technically a prank." My brain finally caught up with what she was saying. "You're not his wife." "No, you're not even, nope." She raised her hands apologetically. "Just a friend helping with a very questionable experiment." My confusion slowly turned into something else. Anger. "What experiment?" She hesitated. Then she answered honestly. "They wanted to see how jealous you were." For a few seconds I just stared at her. Every emotion from the last 24 hours came rushing back all at once. Fear, doubt, panic, sleepless night, all because of a prank. "They thought it would be funny," she continued carefully. "Ryan saved the number as do not answer weeks ago. The plan was to call and see if you would ignore it." My voice came out quiet but sharp. "And if I didn't?" She gave a small, awkward shrug. "Well, then we'd see what happened." I sat there in silence. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. "Ryan knew about this?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." The word hung in the air between us. Outside the cafe window, the rain had finally stopped. But inside my chest, something still felt stormy. Because in that moment, I realized something important. It wasn't the fake wife that hurt. It wasn't the prank itself. It was the fact that Ryan had agreed to test my trust instead of simply trusting me.